The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow over the cold, impersonal office. I sat at my desk, staring blankly at the email that had just landed in my inbox. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through it again, each word stabbing me like shards of glass. They'd done it. After everything, the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the years poured into this project, they'd cut my bonus and erased me from the patent application. My name is Isabel Monroe, though you wouldn't know it if you looked at the company's new press release about their groundbreaking innovation. The same innovation I spearheaded. The same breakthrough I spent 3 years of my life perfecting. And now? Now they were pretending I didn't exist. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug crescents into my palms. It wasn't supposed to end like this. Not after all I'd given up for them. For this place. It started 4 years ago when I joined Sterling Innovations, a tech giant known for its cutting-edge research and ruthless corporate culture. Back then I was starry-eyed, fresh out of grad school with a degree in biomedical engineering and dreams bigger than the city skyline outside my tiny apartment window. I thought I could change the world here. That maybe, just maybe, I'd be one of those people whose work made a real difference. They assigned me to Project Helix almost immediately. At first, it sounded impossible. Develop an AI-driven diagnostic tool capable of predicting rare diseases before symptoms even appeared. But impossible wasn't something I believed in, not anymore. Not since I'd watched my younger brother waste away because doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong until it was too late. This project wasn't just a job, it was personal. Every line of code I wrote, every algorithm I refined, felt like a step toward redemption, for him, for me, for everyone who deserved better. And I did it. Over countless late nights fueled by caffeine and sheer determination, I cracked it. By the time we reached the final stages of testing, the results were staggering. Our prototype identified conditions with 98% accuracy, better than anything on the market. The implications were enormous. Lives would be saved. Families spared the agony of watching someone they loved slip away without answers. But no one told me how much power comes with success, or how dangerous it can make you in the eyes of others. At first, things seemed fine. My team celebrated our milestones together, and upper management praised our progress during quarterly reviews. I even got invited to present our findings at an industry conference, a rare honor for someone at my level. But beneath the surface, cracks began to form. Subtle ones at first. Like how meetings suddenly required approvals I hadn't needed before. Or how emails asking for updates went unanswered for days. Then came the whispers. Colleagues avoiding eye contact. Hushed conversations stopping abruptly whenever I entered a room. Still, I brushed it off. Paranoia, I told myself. Corporate politics weren't my strong suit, but I figured as long as I delivered results, none of it mattered. How wrong I was. One afternoon, I stayed late to finish running simulations for a critical trial phase. As I packed up my things around midnight, I noticed the light still on in Victor Langston's office. Victor was the division head, a slick, silver-haired man with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. He wasn't exactly friendly, but he'd always been professional. Until now. Curiosity got the better of me. His door was slightly ajar, and I heard voices inside. One belonged to Victor, the other to someone unfamiliar. A lawyer, judging by the tone. They were talking about me. She's getting too close, Victor said, his voice low but urgent. If she figures out what we're planning, she'll blow the whole thing wide open. What do you want me to do? The second voice asked. Make sure her name doesn't appear anywhere near the patent filings, Victor replied. And get HR to draft termination papers for redundancy. We can't afford loose ends. My heart stopped. Termination? Redundancy? Those words hit me like a freight train. I stumbled back, clutching the wall for support. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be. I should have walked away then. Should have gone straight to HR or called a lawyer or done something. But shock rooted me to the spot. Instead, I stood there frozen, listening as they plotted my erasure from the very project I'd built from scratch. When I finally dragged myself home that night, sleep eluded me. Every time I closed my eyes, Victor's words echoed in my mind. Loose ends. That's what I was to them. Disposable. Replaceable. All those promises about recognition and advancement? Lies. Empty words meant to keep me working harder while they prepared to take credit for my work. By morning, anger had replaced fear. I wasn't going down without a fight. The next day, I requested a meeting with HR under the guise of discussing benefits. While waiting for my appointment, I accessed the internal server from my phone. I already knew where to look. Years of troubleshooting technical issues had taught me more about the company's digital infrastructure than anyone realized. Within minutes, I found what I was searching for: drafts of the patent application. Sure enough, my name was conspicuously absent. That's when I saw it, the clause buried deep within the fine print. A confidentiality agreement tied to severance packages. If I accepted their offer, I'd forfeit any claim to the intellectual property associated with Project Helix. Forever. A cold fury settled over me. They weren't just stealing my work, they were trying to silence me completely. And worse, they assumed I'd roll over and let them. Not a chance. Over the next few weeks, I played along. I smiled politely during meetings, submitted reports on schedule, and pretended not to notice the growing distance between me and my colleagues. Behind the scenes, however, I worked tirelessly to gather evidence. Emails, documents, test results. I copied everything onto encrypted drives hidden in plain sight. If they wanted to erase me, I'd make damn sure they regretted it. Then came the email that sent me spiraling. Subject line: bonus adjustment notification. Dear Isabel, due to recent organizational restructuring, your annual performance bonus has been revised to reflect updated budgetary constraints. Please note that this adjustment will not impact your current role or responsibilities. Thank you for your continued dedication to Sterling Innovations. Budgetary constraints? Bullshit. This wasn't about money, it was punishment. A slap in the face designed to remind me of my place. To break me before they pushed me out entirely. I stared at the screen, seething. 4 years of blood, sweat, and tears reduced to a single paragraph devoid of humanity. No apology. No explanation. Just cold, calculated cruelty. That's when I decided, if they wanted to play dirty, I'd raise the stakes. Late one evening, I slipped into the lab under the guise of finishing some last-minute analyses. In reality, I had another agenda. Hidden beneath layers of encrypted files lay the original codebase for Project Helix, the foundation upon which everything else was built. Without it, the entire system would collapse like a house of cards. Carefully, methodically, I downloaded the entire repository onto an external drive. Then, using a series of commands only I understood, I triggered a failsafe I'd embedded years ago. A self-destruct protocol set to activate remotely at my command. If necessary, I could obliterate every trace of the project from Sterling's servers. Let them try to move forward without me then. As I left the building that night, a strange sense of calm washed over me. For the first time in months, I felt in control. Whatever happened next, I held the cards. Not Victor. Not Sterling Innovations. Me. Days turned into weeks. Rumors swirled about impending layoffs, but nothing official surfaced. Meanwhile, I kept my head down, biding my time. Each interaction with Victor became a delicate dance of feigned ignorance and quiet defiance. He must have sensed something was off. He started micromanaging my tasks, scrutinizing every report, but he couldn't prove anything. Not yet. Then one fateful Friday afternoon, it happened. An envelope appeared on my desk labeled Confidential, Employee Separation Agreement. Inside was a severance package offering 6 months' salary and a non-disclosure agreement thicker than my college textbooks. The message was clear: sign it, disappear, and never speak of Project Helix again. I laughed. Actually laughed. The audacity of it all astounded me. Did they really think a paycheck and a gag order would suffice? After everything? No. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That weekend, I drafted a plan. A bold, risky move that could either save me or ruin me entirely. First, I reached out to an old mentor, a retired professor who'd once advised me during grad school. She listened patiently as I laid out my case, providing insight and connections I desperately needed. Next, I contacted a journalist friend who specialized in corporate exposés. Together, we pieced together a narrative exposing Sterling's corruption, complete with irrefutable proof of their misconduct. But there was one piece missing, a bargaining chip powerful enough to ensure my safety while dismantling their empire. Something they couldn't ignore. And that's when inspiration struck. What if I didn't just expose them? What if I took away their golden goose altogether? Monday morning, I marched into Victor's office unannounced. His smug expression faltered as I dropped the external drive onto his desk. "You wanted to bury me," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "Instead, I'm giving you a choice. Walk away from Project Helix, publicly acknowledge my contributions, and compensate me fairly, or watch everything you've built crumble to dust." Victor's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. Good. He needed to hear this. "I own the original codebase," I continued. "Without it, your precious AI is worthless. Try to stop me, and I'll leak every dirty secret you've tried to hide. Your call." For a moment, silence hung heavy between us. Then slowly, Victor leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "You've got guts, Isabel," he admitted. "I'll give you that. But, he sighed, "you underestimate how far we're willing to go to protect our interests." His words sent a chill down my spine, but I refused to show weakness. "We'll see about that." With that, I turned and walked out, leaving him to stew in uncertainty. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: Sterling Innovations had underestimated me. And that mistake would cost them dearly. As I stepped into the elevator, adrenaline coursed through my veins. The game had changed. No longer was I merely a pawn in their twisted chess match, I was the queen poised to strike. But victory wouldn't come easily. Battles like this rarely did. Still, I welcomed the challenge. Because for the first time in years, I felt alive. The elevator doors slid shut, and I leaned against the cool metal wall, letting out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My heart was pounding, but there was clarity in my chest, a sense that no matter what happened next, I had taken control. For so long, I'd felt powerless, like a cog in their machine. But now I was the one pulling strings. I wasn't naive enough to think Victor would roll over without a fight. Sterling Innovations thrived on dominance, secrecy, and manipulation. They weren't just going to let me walk away with leverage, they'd retaliate. Hard. The question was how far they'd go to protect their empire. Would they try to discredit me? Blackmail me? Or worse? As I stepped out into the lobby, sunlight streaming through the glass walls, I reminded myself why I was doing this. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. About exposing the rot at the core of companies like Sterling. People needed to know the truth, that innovation often came at the expense of those who dared to dream. By the time I got home, my phone was buzzing non-stop. Texts from colleagues asking if I'd heard about the restructuring. A vague email from HR requesting an urgent meeting. Even Victor had sent a message, cryptic, as always, "Let's not act rashly." I ignored them all. Instead, I focused on the next phase of my plan. First, I secured the external drive containing the original codebase in a safety deposit box under a fake name. Then I drafted a detailed timeline of events leading up to this moment, every conversation, every email, every piece of evidence I'd gathered. If things went sideways, I wanted to ensure someone else could pick up where I left off. Next, I called my journalist friend, Mia. She'd already started digging into Sterling's history, uncovering skeletons buried deep within their corporate archives. Together, we outlined a strategy for releasing the information in waves, starting with internal memos showing how they planned to erase my contributions, followed by proof of unethical practices tied to Project Helix. "You're playing with fire," Mia warned after our call. "These people have lawyers, PR teams, and connections you can't even imagine." "I know," I replied. "But sometimes, you have to burn the house down to rebuild it." Her silence told me she understood. This wasn't just about me anymore, it was about setting an example. About showing others trapped in similar situations that fighting back wasn't impossible. The following morning, I woke up to a text from Victor, "We need to talk." Privately. My stomach churned. Was he bluffing, or did he actually want to negotiate? Either way, I couldn't afford to ignore him. Ignoring him meant giving him time to regroup, to strategize. No, I needed to keep him on edge. Keep him guessing. I responded simply, "When and where?" He suggested a private meeting room at a nearby hotel, an odd choice, given his usual preference for boardrooms and power lunches. Still, I agreed. Whatever game he was playing, I intended to stay 2 steps ahead. When I arrived, the room was dimly lit, with only a small table and 2 chairs. Victor sat waiting, flanked by a man I didn't recognize, a lawyer, judging by his tailored suit and clipboard. The air was thick with tension. "Thank you for coming," Victor began, his tone clipped. "I assume you've thought about our situation." "I have," I said, taking a seat across from him. "And my terms haven't changed." Victor exchanged a glance with the lawyer before leaning forward. "Isabel, let's be reasonable. You're putting yourself in a very precarious position. Do you really want to risk everything over pride?" "Pride?" I laughed bitterly. "This isn't about pride, Victor. It's about integrity. About standing up for what's right. Something you wouldn't understand." His jaw tightened, but he pressed on. "Fine. Let's say we acknowledge your contributions publicly. What then? You think that'll save you? Once word gets out about this little stunt of yours, no company will touch you. Your career will be over." I smirked. "Funny you should mention careers. Because if I'm done, I'm taking you and Sterling with me." For the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine fear in his eyes. He knew I wasn't bluffing. Knew I had the means to destroy him. But instead of backing down, he doubled down. "Maybe," he conceded. "But do you really want to play martyr? Because that's what this is, Isabel. A kamikaze mission. And for what? To make a point. To make sure no one else has to go through what I did," I shot back. "To show people like you that you can't exploit talent and expect to get away with it." Victor sighed, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. "All right. Let's cut to the chase. What do you want?" "Public acknowledgement of my role in developing Project Helix," I said. "A formal apology issued to me, and anyone else affected by your tactics. And full compensation for my work, including royalties moving forward." "And if we refuse?" the lawyer interjected, his voice icy. "Then I release everything," I replied evenly. "Every dirty secret, every unethical decision, every lie. By the time I'm done, Sterling won't exist anymore." The room fell silent. Victor stared at me, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded. "You drive a hard bargain, Isabel. Give us 24 hours to discuss your demands." 12, I countered. "And don't waste my time stalling." With that, I stood and walked out, leaving them to stew in their own mess. Back home, adrenaline coursed through my veins. Had I pushed too hard? Not hard enough? There was no way to tell yet. All I could do was wait, and prepare for whatever came next. That evening, I received another message. This time, it wasn't from Victor. It was from Mia. "We found something big. Call me ASAP." My pulse quickened as I dialed her number. When she answered, her voice was barely above a whisper. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Sterling's been funneling funds into offshore accounts linked to illegal medical trials. Experimental treatments tested on vulnerable populations without consent. It's massive." My blood ran cold. This was bigger than I'd imagined. Bigger than Project Helix. If true, it meant Sterling wasn't just exploiting employees, they were endangering lives. "How solid is the evidence?" I asked. "Solid enough to bring them to their knees," Mia replied. "But releasing it won't be easy. They'll come after you with everything they've got." "I know," I said, gripping the phone tightly. "But we can't stop now. If anything, this proves we're doing the right thing." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then softly, Mia spoke again. "Just promise me one thing." "What?" "That you'll be careful. These people aren't playing games." I swallowed hard, nodding even though she couldn't see me. "I will. Promise." Over the next few days, the stakes grew higher. Victor reached out multiple times, each message more desperate than the last. Meanwhile, Sterling's PR team launched a smear campaign, painting me as unstable and untrustworthy. Anonymous comments flooded social media, questioning my credibility and motives. But I refused to back down. With Mia's help, I released snippets of evidence online, enough to spark outrage but not enough to reveal our full hand. Public pressure mounted, forcing Sterling to issue a vague statement denying wrongdoing while promising an internal investigation. It was working. Slowly but surely, the tide was turning. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something big. Victor's sudden willingness to negotiate. The smear campaign. The eerie silence from upper management. It all pointed to one thing: they were planning something drastic. And then late one night, it happened. I was sitting at my kitchen table, reviewing documents when a loud knock startled me. My heart leapt into my throat as I peered through the peephole. 2 men in suits stood outside, their expressions grim. "Ms. Monroe," one of them said when I opened the door cautiously. "We need to speak with you." "About what?" I asked, keeping the chain lock firmly in place. "It's regarding your allegations against Sterling Innovations," the second man replied. "Please, this is urgent." Something about their demeanor set off alarm bells. Were they cops? Lawyers? Or something else entirely? "I'm sorry," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "I don't discuss legal matters without representation. Good night." Before they could respond, I closed the door and locked it, my hands trembling. That's when I noticed the envelope slipped under the crack, a single sheet of paper bearing 3 words. "Stop while you can." Ice water coursed through my veins. They weren't bluffing anymore. This was a threat. Plain and simple. For a moment, doubt crept in. Maybe Victor was right. Maybe I was risking everything for nothing. But then I remembered why I started this fight in the first place. For my brother. For everyone who deserved better. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my laptop and opened a new document. If they wanted a war, they'd get one. But this time, I wouldn't hold anything back. Hours later, the first bombshell hit. A whistleblower website published a damning exposé detailing Sterling's involvement in illegal medical trials. Names, dates, locations, all laid bare for the world to see. Within minutes, social media exploded. News outlets scrambled to verify the claims. Politicians demanded investigations. And me? I watched it unfold from the shadows, knowing I'd struck the match that ignited the blaze. The exposé sent shockwaves through the corporate world, forcing Sterling Innovations to shut down its unethical operations. Victor and several top executives were arrested, their crimes exposed for all to see. I testified in court, my voice steady as I recounted everything I'd endured and fought for. In the aftermath, I was offered a position at a non-profit dedicated to ethical innovation, where my work could truly make a difference. Project Helix was redeveloped under transparent, humane guidelines, saving countless lives. My brother's memory became a beacon of hope, inspiring others to stand up against injustice. 1 year later, I received an award for courage in advocacy, standing on stage to roaring applause. As I looked out at the crowd, I felt peace, not just for myself, but for everyone who'd been silenced. Justice had prevailed. And those scars remained, they reminded me of how far I'd come. Life wasn't perfect, but it was whole. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe the future was bright. Sterling crumbled under the weight of its scandals, and justice finally prevailed. I rebuilt my life, dedicating myself to ethical innovation that honored my brother's memory. The world saw the truth, and change began. Standing on stage at a conference years later, I smiled, knowing I'd made a difference. Peace at last felt real.